Welcome to the RKD Group Thinkers podcast. I am your host, Justin McCord, and with me is Ronnie Richard. Ronnie, as I was saying that, I don't know, I just had this little mental giggle of I'm saying who I am as I'm looking at you and you know who I am.
Or do I?
or do you? Or do you? Okay, so from time to time on the show, Ronnie, you step into conversations with people that I have known for a longer period of time. Sometimes it's that we're both coming in kind of fresh. This is one to where it's someone that I've known for a little bit longer period of time, both from a distance and up close. And so I'm curious your perspective and or thoughts on how you're going to tee up this conversation with today's guest.
Sure. For our listeners, our guest today is T. Clay Buck. He is the founder and principal of Next River Fundraising Strategies, which is freshly rebranded, I believe announced yesterday or the day before. So we might be his first public announcement of it other than posting on LinkedIn. But Clay, he's got 30 years of experience in fundraising. He is just a fountain of knowledge in the space, and some of that goes into the discussion, which I was really impressed with. Just how much institutional knowledge he has and different perspectives he brings in around that. But I guess what really stood out to me is as we were kind of wrapping up the conversation, he touched on what drives him and what inspires him, and got into talking about the people and working with the people, and you can just feel this energy and positivity around it that it just sort of exudes from him.
He is a character and one that brings depth to the sector in a meaningful way. One of my favorite things that I ever heard Clay say is that the Venn diagram overlap between humans and donors is 100%. and that is so true, and it gets so lost in the craft of fundraising, whether or not you're talking about the mass market craft, the mid-level craft, up into the major and planned and or corporate craft. And so to hear his earnesty come out as a part of this conversation, both his experience and the joy that even comes from the podcast that he co-hosts with Lynn Wester, Fundraising is Funny, is truly special. So for our listeners, you're in for a treat. So here is, I prefer to say the Clay instead of T. Clay. Here is the Clay Buck on RKD Group's Thinkers podcast. Now you got us self-conscious about the countdown.
I told you.
Okay, so have you ever used Asana, the project management tool?
Yes.
So my favorite thing about Asana was the unicorn. Whenever you complete a task, the little unicorn that would fly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Across. I feel like Riverside and or other recording platforms could incorporate a little more joy and fun if they had something similar. So that instead of the countdown just being like the number on screen, if it were the a GIF of the character from Wayne's World that couldn't get the countdown right.
See, I don't know. I'm feeling a little old school lately. Do you remember the visualizations, the music visualizations on the early Windows screens, right? Something like that, right? Like sort of kaleidoscopy kind of
crazy. Yeah,
sure.
Exactly.
I'm here for any of it. Like, put to make it sound like an Eckerd's. That's fine.
When did we decide professional had to be boring?
It's a great question.
I don't think we made that decision. That decision was made for us.
Okay, Billy Joel, we didn't start the fire.
Oh, listen, this is for anyone who's survived up until this point in the conversation. This is what you can expect for the next, 30, 45 minutes.
However long you let us.
Yeah. Clay and I share a tremendous amount of joy, Ronnie, anytime we're in a setting together, and it's because it is it's not like a lack of focus in a bad way. It is maybe the best exercise in improv, period, just amongst like conversation.
You are one of the easiest first meetings people I've ever met. Like,
Go on.
I have a distinct visual of the first time we met in person, and what you were wearing and what you were doing and where we were. And it was just like this immediate, like that conversation started then and continues now, right? Like we have just kind of been in this mode ever since. So I'm here for it.
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks.
Okay.
And specifically, let's get down to conference buttons, because you referencing what we're wearing. I would love for you to share with Ronnie and or the audience, because I think it frames much of your depth of expertise, the conference jean jacket. Can you just unpack that for starters?
I can. I'm going to ask you to vamp a little bit while I do, because
okay, awesome.
We may as well just have
the jacket.
The visual,
yes,
right?
This is like Ric Flair going to get a robe.
Yeah, hold on. You vamp.
Okay,
continue.
I'm gonna vamp. Okay, so Ronnie, I've shared with you, Clay has been in the sector for a minute. I think that I consider him to be someone that's been a high-level thought leader for well over a decade, tremendously respected. And that also comes with a tremendous amount of being well-traveled across the nonprofit sphere, right? And Clay shared with me about a year ago that he has an artifact that also includes multiple artifacts from all of the conferences that he has attended over time.
Perfect time.
Yeah. And so
that did take longer than I anticipated. My apologies. I have not taken it off its hook in a while. So it is heavier than I remembered. So did you already did the setup?
Yeah, I did the setup. You have no idea what the setup is, which actually makes me even more happy.
Right, exactly. This is the conference jacket.
That is incredible.
Well, okay, so there's a couple of things. First, my first job, I'm knocking off things on the floor. My first job in high school, my first job was at Domino's Pizza. My second job was working in a bookstore. And whenever there were book releases, we had all these buttons that we had to wear for the book releases. So I just started sticking them on this jacket when the book release was done. And so they just grew over time. My brother-in-law, when he first started dating my sister, said one of the greatest things, I just remember him saying this, one of the greatest, everybody needs a me wall, right? Some place in your house, whatever, that you look at and you go, that's me, right? So whether it's degrees or pictures or whatever, that place that you can look at and say, that's who I am, it reminds me of who I am, whatever. That's what that jacket is for me, because it's every conference I've ever spoken at, it's every job name tag I've ever had, it's pins and stuff that people have given me or that I've picked up along the way, and it's just become kind of a thing. So,
have you ever counted them?
No.
Do you have an estimate of how many?
Oh, there's hundreds. It's probably well over 200.
Okay, so I will tease for you a little bit of the setup that I gave while vamping for you. Clay, I consider you, I've shared with you before, you were someone whose thought leadership and presence grabbed my attention the second that I got into the industry. And I put you on a pedestal. You don't like it, but I put you on a pedestal as having been a high-level thought leader for as long as I've been in the space. And so I'm curious, because you're also like one of the most well-read about the history of philanthropy and fundraising, certainly in Western philanthropy and fundraising. like that is a perfect picture of you as a U wall, but it's also something that tracks some of the ebbs and flows of seasons of this space that we live in. And so, how do you think about the space that we're in now? Like knowing that you have all these artifacts and knowing that you have walked in your shoes in this space, how do you feel about fundraising right now? Like what comes to mind?
Thank you for the good words. I do appreciate that. I intentionally became a student, if you will, of this work of philanthropy. I'll say I intentionally became a student of fundraising at a real critical point, at kind of an inflection point in my career, and up until then had kind of been doing it. So the study has been very intentional and sort of scratches that frustrated academic itch. I was supposed to be an academic and it didn't happen, but anyway, life. How do I think about fundraising now? Not the lighthearted fun answer you wanted, probably. What I am concerned about with fundraising now is that I feel like we're at a balance of innovation and revolution that is not factoring in history. And at times I think we're starting to revolutionize and question things that we aren't grounded enough in understanding their history to revolutionize them. I don't want to say throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's like we don't remember why the bath was drawn to begin with, right? So I fear, what keeps me up at night is I fear that we are potentially throwing away a lot of principles that have been proven while we're trying to evolve best practice. And those are two different things, right?
Do you think that's is it an intentional letting out of that bathwater, or that as fundraisers and or nonprofit marketers, are we in the midst of overwhelm? Have we just like things are seeping out of our grasp?
I think this is a little bit of age. As I'm in my mid 50s, right? And am looking at, there is a measurable finite number for retirement. So I do, for me at least, this is part of where I am in my career. Just at the brink of, kids, get off my lawn, right? I'm like 5 steps away from Statler and Waldorf in the balcony of the theater, right?
Bring on the tweed, man. Let's do it.
Right. And I had this conversation with, I'm not going to single him out, but it is someone you would know, author, thought leader, etc. And his response to me was, Clay, we did this to ourselves. And we did this to ourselves starting in the late 90s, but really in the early 2000s. And the point that I'm getting at is, as we started into the tech revolution, the online revolution, I was one of the first 20 beta testers of what is now one of our industry's like leading platforms. And I was one of the first 20 beta testers of their new online giving thing, right? And we were all like, what is this? Right? And so as that evolved, I think that people came into the sector differently. So I was, and I also learned the craft in Chicago. So I'm like second generation of, one of my first bosses worked for Jimmy Alford, the Alford Group, right? I kind of come from that history. So I was steeped in Jerry Panis and Cy Seymour and right, all of the early writings and knowledge of the profession. And I think a lot of people now are in leadership roles that didn't come in the same way. So I work really hard to balance that. Kids, get off my lawn, right? The old guy in fundraising with a lot of innovation. And I fear that somewhere in this evolution, we missed some of those same groundings, right? Like everything that Cy Seymour said, Designs for Fundraising, 1967, Harold J. Cy Seymour, everything in that book is relevant today. You just change the methodology. And I fear that we've missed that. So I think a lot of people are coming in going, oh, well, I was told that, fundraising is about wealth. No, nobody, no, it's not what we meant, right?
Right.
But somehow it got interpreted that way and trained that way and taught that way. And so now we're trying to get out of that perspective.
Yeah.
But feeling, here, let me put it this way. Sorry, I'm stumbling over this. I was in a session at a conference where the question was, let's examine best practice. And they had people in the audience just call out best practices. And, let's look at it and like 5 things. People went, direct mail is all about, giving away the best direct mail best practice is giving away address labels and tote bags. I'm like, no. Where did you get that? Because
hiss.
Right. So some of our perceptions of best practice
Sure.
have just gotten into this sort of misinterpretation. So we're going to revolutionize this. No, that was bad. That was always bad. That was always not the right thing. Not necessarily that particular thing. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm tripping over words in an unusual way. Sorry.
For a podcast host, that's okay. So
how do we bring it back? How do we change course?
To me, that's getting back, talking more, right? Talking more about what the principles of fundraising were. I mean, that question, fundraising is about relationships. Okay, great. But what does that mean, right? What does that mean? I think it's getting back to relationships, values, identity, and using now what we know from psychology and neuromarketing and neuroscience and bringing that in to inform, right? That all fundraising and engagement is about values and action. That's what we meant when we were saying 40 years ago it's about relationships, right?
It's, yeah. Because it's right now it's a season of everything, everywhere, all at once. Like that is fundraising right now.
Right.
And that creates the overwhelm that exists or spools it up if it doesn't seed it. And even to your point about relationship fundraising, I have exceptionally high trust in the gentleman that changes the oil on my Volkswagen. My long-term net value to his shop is very high.
Sure.
I have never texted him or gone to dinner with him or played golf with him. I've never been invited over for, a barbecue. Like we are in an everything, everywhere all at once mentality. We are running with things at a USA Today level as opposed to a Wall Street Journal level of depth. And I think it is creating vacuums that are hard to escape.
I agree. I completely agree. I totally agree. I think Ronnie, it's really such a great question. I think that fundraisers, and when I say fundraisers, now this is a whole other podcast, and you and I will go around on this for months, right? The difference between fundraising and marketing. I'm not going to go there today, but so when I'm saying fundraising, I'm including underneath that umbrella anybody that is doing marketing on behalf of fundraising, communications, anything that affects raising dollars.
Correct.
I think that fundraisers, that blanket, have to live in a what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? Dichotomy is the word. It's a weird balance to be in because we have to be money focused. We are evaluated by how we do money. That is what we are here to do. We are here to bring in money. At the end of the day, it is revenue. You can go out and build all the relationships you want. If you're not bringing home a dime, you're not fundraising. And vice versa. You can go out and raise all the money that you want. And if you're not building relationships, you're not fundraising. It is living in that balance. And that is a very tough balance to live in. And it's a very tough balance to manage. because I think a lot of our leadership in the nonprofit space is fundraising is revenue, and they just want us to go raise money. They don't want to deal with all this stuff that we want to deal with. Just go raise the money. Don't bother me with it, which is not what we do when we're doing it well. I've sort of evolved into this from, more reading and so forth. If we look at fundraising, not as an ask, but as an offer or an invitation. And what we are doing when we are fundraising, when we are marketing, when we are communicating, is we are engaging a community in our mission. We are inviting them to be a part of it. We are offering them the opportunity to be a part of this vision and mission, right? Then fundraising isn't revenue generating, it is mission. That is part of our mission. Our mission is to rescue ravaging wombats. And we're going to invite you to be a part of it with your donation. You are now a part of we can't do it without you, and we can't do it without the wombat wranglers, and we can't do it without the copy machine that doesn't work. It takes all of this working together. So if I'm out here inviting and offering you a chance to be a part of it, that is part of my mission. It's not, I was told early on in my career, right? We're not the mission. Yeah, I actually disagree with that now. I think all communications for a nonprofit is mission, right? Or just go ahead and do it on your own, right? Go ahead and get the money and do the thing, but don't involve the community with it. That's the balance we have to live in.
Yeah, because even as someone that works on behalf of nonprofits, like you do, like we do, we're an extension of the mission. We have to be an embodiment of the mission in the work that we do, whether that is writing a letter or crafting a text message or knocking on a door, whatever those things are. We have to sit in that purpose. And that is something that in the midst of the everything everywhere all at once
right
space, I do think that we not only do we lose it, we also we become enamored with commercialized marketing, and there is a massive difference in the passion and purpose and fulfillment that comes from the nobility of the work that we do in fundraising. That doesn't exist the same way when I, order a pair of shoes.
Why do you get your car fixed?
Because
it needs it. Why do you take your car to the repair shop?
Because it needs it. Because it's me stewarding the asset that I have.
Well, sure, but I mean, really, like an oil change, a tire change, it's pretty much fine, right? I mean, I'm gonna argue that the reason you get your car repaired is that you move from point A to point B more efficiently, and you keep your family safe when you're driving.
Sure, absolutely.
Two things that are very important to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to argue that your repair shop isn't a part of your core values or identity as a person, except for the fact that it feeds those two key motivators for you.
Yes, absolutely.
I want a safe, reliable ride for me and my family to get where we're going. And to do that, I'm going to go to this shop that I trust, that enables that thing to happen. And on some random day, on some random podcast, I'm going to mention my repair shop that I probably haven't thought about in 3 or 4 months. But as soon as something goes wrong, they're the first person I'm going to call, right?
Yeah. How do you teach this when you're in front of either conference rooms or when you're in front of classrooms from your time at teaching at UNLV? Like, this is a part of the core of who Clay is that I appreciate so much. How does this play out in terms of arming an audience?
The first step is systems. So I have a reputation for being a data guy, and I'm fine with that reputation. I am not a data guy. I'm a twice over theater major that couldn't make it well. I could have. I didn't want to. Once I learned I hated auditioning. Anyway, different story, right? I failed college algebra twice. I am not a math guy. I am not a data guy. Okay, you've got such great Excel skills. No, I don't. I know how to sort and filter and how to Google formulas. And now AI, I can chat whatever the formulas that I need, right? But I learned very early on as an annual fund guy, nobody was going to clean my data for me. When I pulled a mailing to get it accurate and land in homes, I had to clean that data myself. So I learned how to do it. So the first step to me is teaching, explaining, investing in the values of functioning systems. Because once you get your systems working, everything else can be easier. Honestly, truly. Stop fighting data and the copy machine that doesn't work and the CRM with the bad data. Get that fixed, because that's a finite thing that you can touch and fix and do, right? Get that done. Then let's focus on what we're using that system to communicate, because to me, it comes down to once you really absorb the mission, the mandates, the vision of the organization, once that's clear, right? Once we start to value that ourselves as part of culture, I mean, it's the old saying, right? Right? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Well, systems inform culture. So if everybody's mad at I keep picking on the poor copying machine, but right? The printer that doesn't work.
Copy machine really hurt your feelings today.
Oh, dude, not today. That's a holdover thing that I probably need to see a professional about. But I mean, literally one job I had, chief development officer. We literally had a lot. Like, you would go to the copy machine to print the thing that you're about to put in front of a donor and find that there's 20 jobs in front of you. All of that got hung up, right? So like,
it's a great visual and actual metaphor of where a bottleneck can exist.
I tell this story all the time. I met a friend. I was at a friend's for Thanksgiving one year, and they had a couple we didn't know. And you get to talking like you do at Thanksgiving, and the woman said, we've spent yesterday at a youth homeless shelter, helping to make sandwiches and, ready for the Thanksgiving meal. Like, oh, that's great. Yeah, it was really frustrating. Why was it frustrating? What happened? Well, I spilled a bunch of mayonnaise on the counter. And I went to get paper towels to clean it up, and there were no paper towels. And so I asked the volunteer coordinator, once I found her, where the paper towels were, and she said, we don't have any. We ran out, and we can't afford to buy new until the next budget cycle. So we're out of paper towels. Long story short, the woman said the thing that was standing between these kids and a healthy lunch was a paper towel. Right, which I kind of use that story to talk about the importance of overhead, quote unquote, but also about systems, because it is these things that hang us up. So we're over here stressing about paper towels, and meanwhile, we have a woman who wants to feed hungry youth. So let's get our systems fixed. Number one, fix the systems and let them ride and build the processes that support them. And then number two, that informs the culture. So if we're not fighting our systems, then we've got a much better culture of we can all be focused on mission. And that's on leadership. So that's the hardest part is really driving with leadership with the C-suite and the board on culture is you. You have to drive culture. You have to drive culture, and you have to drive culture making the systems work, because your staff is frustrated and tired and all the other things, right?
Clay, I want to change course a little bit on the conversation. We talk a lot about on our show that it's about the people more so than the craft. And we've been talking a lot about craft, and it's been a lot of awesome, amazing insights, really, honestly. But you mentioned this one thing, and I want to go back to it. You mentioned that you started off in theater. Uh-huh. So I want to know how did you get from that to fundraising? How did that journey happen? So, can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So 1990.
He's got to look at the jacket and figure out where the first button came from.
I did actually, because it's now on the floor, and yeah, I'm gonna have to text you pictures of the cleanup that this is gonna happen anyway, or when I walk in here at midnight and step on a pin. Anyway, 1990, I was a sophomore in college, majoring in theater, and I was hired as an intern at a small summer stock theater in North Carolina. And my job as an intern was to work in the box office and to be in 2 of the shows of the 4 show rep. And so I spent that summer in the box office, and with every sale, right? So you buy your subscription for the season, and I would say, and do you want to round that up because we're a nonprofit, blah, blah, blah. I didn't know until much, much later. I did that for 7 years. I didn't know until much, much later that was actually a career. So It was a thing called fundraising that you could actually do. So fast forward, finished my graduate degree in theater. I moved to Chicago. I got $500 in my pocket. I'm going to be an actor. I learned within the first 2 weeks that I really hated auditioning professionally. Like, it was soul draining and awful, and I hated it. And also that $500 wasn't enough to live on in Chicago in the mid 90s. So I signed up for a temp agency, and the very first place they placed me was at an institute of higher education in the fundraising office. And day one, they go, do you know anything about fundraising? Can you write a grant? We need a grant written here. Do this. And I went, it took about a week before I went, oh, this is the same stuff that I was doing there. And they hired me on full time. And that was right. And they tell you in theater training, if you find something you love more and can do better, go do it. So I did.
Is that what you expected, Ronnie? Is that where you were thinking the path was going to be?
I didn't know what I expected. I was just, it seems like a jump. Like it's, and we hear so many times from guests that I kind of fell into fundraising. I never intended to go into fundraising, and everyone's got their own path that's a little bit different.
I mean, yes, and but how many people actually work in their major?
Right.
I mean, there are many majors like pre-med, et cetera, but a lot of people major in something and they didn't mean to get into widgets. That wasn't the plan. They wanted to be in business, right? But they became an expert at widgets. So,
Listen, let's see. I don't know. Yesterday evening at 7:00, this is the conversation I'm having with my high school sophomore.
Yeah.
As we're yes, you don't have to, it's okay to go down a path and then, like Alice, fall into a place where you meet all sorts of interesting people. Because that's what Alice did, and that's what I think we get to do.
You're not picking a major that's going to, it doesn't mean this is the next 50 years of your life.
Yeah.
I do think that's one of the strengths of one of the things that we can learn from, younger generations is, I don't know. I think the rules are different,
Yeah.
I certainly grew up with what do you want to be when you grow up? And you were sort of defined by, that career choice. And the days of working at a company and retiring from that company are probably long over.
Says the guy who created a brand just before coming on our podcast. And we've never had someone do that, like launch a company because they're appearing on the RKD Group Thinker Show. So thank you for bestowing
That was the whole reason. Yep, totally. 2 years of work just for this 20-minute conversation. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Culminated to this moment.
Worth every minute.
Worth every minute. Okay, and so last week you pressed send and refreshed LinkedIn, and since then, Take Me to the River has been just on my playlist.
That's fantastic. I love that.
So peel apart the path to get to Next River, your new company, and the ebbs and flows of that path. And what it means for you right now. Ronnie, I see that you appreciated that.
Yes.
So, okay, now I'm just going to reverse my whole statement of we fall into things. Well, I never meant to be. That was never really the big dream, is I want to run my own company. Long story. Had spent almost a decade in nonprofits. Step back even further than that. I spent 15 years at larger consulting firms, and then went back into nonprofit, kind of proved myself that I could still do it. And opportunities came up here in town, et cetera. Left a job and went, I'm just going to I need to bounce for a little while. And we were in a very fortunate, privileged position that we could. Just needed a breather. I had started the LLC just, to have it. Had picked up a client, doing some work. And then lockdown happened. And we went, okay, so we better do this. I started, and the firm that I started was called Tactical Fundraising Solutions, because what I wanted to do was the thing that I could never do, right? I could never afford or find high-level consulting and vendors that, as a smaller or mid-sized nonprofit, I couldn't afford it, I couldn't access it, all of that. And I wanted to be that consultant. I learned very quickly, if you name your company Tactical, you get on some really interesting lists. Like I can tell you now where to buy Kevlar and a whole bunch of things that I didn't even know that people sold that are military tactical related. So we switched that really quickly. And I just went with my initials TCB for a while. And that was never intended to be like, that was a placeholder. But also now I've been doing this for 5 years, and this process really allowed me to refine and define the service that I do and commit. I'm an individual giving guy. I love the individual donor. I also see that that's the biggest crisis that we're facing now, especially low and mid-range donors are giving elsewhere. And we're sitting around going, retention rates are low, right? Fewer donor households are giving. Okay, well, let's like change that. So that was kind of going through the process of really defining that service offering. I was also at a really critical point in my life. I was gifted a poem by Alberto Rios, who is the poet laureate of the state of Arizona. And the poem's called When Giving Is All We Have. And it begins with, one river gives its journey to the next. And then it goes on into the states of giving and what giving means, right? And in the middle of it says, you gave me yellow and I gave you blue. Together we are simple green. And together we made something greater from the difference. That, to me, just that poem encapsulates what generosity is about, right? And what that human... If all the problems in the world went away, and we lived where everybody had a house and everybody had food and every animal was taken care of and all diseases were cured. Like if all the problems went away, there would still be somebody who needs something and there would still be somebody who wants to help that somebody. So generosity is baked into who we are as humans. And this work of fundraising to me is about being that facilitator of generosity. So that poem specifically just really, to me, lit up what the human experience of generosity is. So.
Are you sure it wasn't Talking Heads? Are you sure?
You're getting a reference that I'm not. You're thinking of a reference.
Take Me to the River. Take Me to the River, Talking Heads. That's the...
Oh, see, I went to the Commitment soundtrack.
I know. See, that's the thing is that there's like the Al Green version. There's one by Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The Oh Brother, Where Art Thou soundtrack.
Yeah. See, there's all sorts of places. What's been the scariest part about launching something new? And what's been the part...
Revenue.
Didn't even let me finish.
The realization that it's you. It's all you.
Yeah.
If a client gets upset with me, there's nobody to go to. Like, I can't look at my president and CEO. I am that guy, right?
Yeah.
I'm also, I also got to make sure the bottles are washed. Like, it is the most challenging but rewarding thing I think anybody can do. The solopreneur route it's a ride. It's a roller coaster. It's terrifying, but just like a me wall. See what Ronnie? This is. I'm going to bring it full circle.
Here we go.
Right? Like having a me wall, something like that, a jacket. When you're in the midst of those, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life? I've started this company, right? How is this going to work? Am I going to keep a roof over my head? And you got your me wall in front of you, right? Keeps you grounded.
How did you get the podcast started? So, I'm just...
No, go ahead.
No, just for our listeners, I mean, you do a podcast called Fundraising is Funny.
Uh-huh.
Your co-host is Lynn Wester.
Uh-huh.
Tell us how that got started. What made you want to do that? How the two of you met and got started?
So Lynn and I knew each other professionally. And we had some interactions online, which then we moved into, private conversations, which then it turned into texts. And again, lockdown happened. And Lynn became one of those key touch points and a conversation just started, and we kept each other laughing for like 9 months. And at one point, one of us said, I don't remember who, one of us said, "Oh my God, we are so funny. We crack ourselves up. We should start a podcast." And here we are, right? Literally, most of the podcast episodes are conversations that Lynn and I have had that, we're going back and forth just laughing. Because exactly the statement that I started with, like, when did we get because I came up in the blue suit and white shirt and the bank, like stuffy. Like, when did we get the idea that professional had to be serious? Like, this is a joy business. Can we not laugh? Right?
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it, because there has been, since I have been in the agency business, I can't tell you the number of times that you are in a conference room or you're on now a video call, and it dawns on you, wait a second, like, are we in a mockumentary? Are we living right now are we characters like that? And so, yes, we are surrounded by opportunities to experience joy, and too often we don't take them.
Well, and like when The Office was popular on TV, like I watched a couple episodes and people are like, "Do you watch The Office?" I'm like, "No, I live it."
All the time.
No.
Okay, so here's where I want to land. I do think that you, Clay, tend to bring light by way of your energy into the spaces that you're in, even when you get amped up, like even whenever you're like really, really wound up. It's coming from a place of positive energy, not Chicken Little sky is falling. What is that source of hope and inspiration for you? What do you draw on that gives you a positive outlook and helps center you in the awesome work that you get to do every day?
It's a particularly tough question right now, and funny that you would ask that right now, because it's a question that I'm asking myself, and I think it's people. I'm fascinated by, and I think that comes from the actor stuff, right? So it's the being in front of people, right, and being in that kind of energy exchange. But I'm also fascinated with people and what we do and why we do what we do, and getting to meet like all different kinds of people. And I think if we're open to it, we have connections in many, many different ways. And some are good and some are negative and some are weird and some are off center and some are odd. And we each kind of embody different personalities depending on the setting that we're in and who we're with. So for me, I think it's people, just that connection and celebrating the uniqueness and oddity and weirdness and messiness that are people. And then secondly, but probably more importantly, my family and I have clear goals. We know what we want to do. Certainly as we're looking at, these next 10, 20 years, right? So there's a goal and there's a focus, and it's very centered in who we are as a family and what we want to be and do.
You're the best, man.
You are.
Ronnie, you're the best. We both agree. Clay and I
go.
both agree
That's
that
it.
Ronnie, you're the best.
I'll just stop it there. I agree.
That's the right answer.
Clay, thanks for hanging out with us and sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Ronnie, just so you know, at some point, Clay and I are going to have some version of a podcast that covers things like the bear and Suits, and like we are going to do some version of it's. I don't know. I feel like it's VH1, but for fundraising. Like it's the weird pop culture type.
Or Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Perfect.
We could just watch things together and comment on it.
Sign me up.
Yes. Yes. Fundraising Science Theater 3000.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, right.
Ronnie, can you make us some puppets?
I'll get right on that.
Yes.
Sure.
All right. We'll catch up with you later, man.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Ronnie, nice to meet you.